All right, let's go ahead and get this going. So welcome again. This is the Microsoft and You webinar for November 2022. I'm going to be your host again, Ted Brown, Director of Product Management here at Ntiva. And today we're going to talk about Microsoft 365 licensing. So we're going to talk about Microsoft 365 versus the Office 365 SKUs that are out there. I get this question all the time, which SKU includes what, what's the best one for my company or person or individual or business unit. And I put together this presentation that will kind of hopefully maybe kind of help drive some ideas around trying to formulate what's the best method of picking the license type for my organization. And during this webinar, we'll talk about the different Microsoft licensing types, as well as this decision tree I've put together to kind of ask the correct questions of what makes sense for my business, as well as making sure I'm not overspending for some of the product bundles that I might not take full utilization of. And also at the end of this, I do have additional licensing information that kind of goes through a spreadsheet of all different licensing types, what it all includes. And I'm not asking for us to kind of go through each one of these little modules here, but I think I just want to make sure you guys understand we do have this capability to go really dive deep into this information, and our account management here has this information that kind of really help direct you and help guide you along the path to make sure you're optimizing your usage within the Microsoft Office suite. Like other webinars, let's go ahead and please keep all the Q&A section for the end of the meeting. So any questions I'll answer at the end. There is a Q&A section to put in your questions there. So I'll take those, answer them at the end. Now, I also like to answer any questions regarding any of the past webinars I've done. So if you have any questions about the Power Apps or the bookings I just did, or anything with maybe Azure Virtual Desktop, please pop in the chat. We'll go ahead and answer those questions. Also, we are formalizing our 2023 webinar schedule, and I'm open to any suggestions that people, if you have any interest of me doing a presentation on a topic that might interest you, let me know, drop me a note. I'll happy to go ahead and put a presentation together, make sure it's designed for what you guys want to learn about and listen to. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So Microsoft launched Office 365 products in around 2011. And around 2017, they started launching the Microsoft Office suite as well, the M365 SKUs. So they kind of ran along each other until around April of 2020. And that's kind of when they started doing all these name changes. So people might kind of been familiar with like the Office Business Essentials, which got named Microsoft 365 Business Basic, and then the Business Premium got changed to the Microsoft 365 Business Standard, and it kind of threw a little confusion there into the industry. When the Microsoft Suite was launched in 2017, they tried to make a really good, clear distinction about what was offered in the Microsoft 365 plans versus what's offered in the O365 plans. The Microsoft 365 plans, what people refer to as M365, they offer pretty much everything that was equivalent in the O365 plans, what they contain, plus they offer more extensive features such as device management with Intune, security features with Azure information protection or things along those lines. They also bundled in things like the Windows Enterprise licensing SKUs that you can utilize to run your OS for Office for Windows 10 or Windows 11 if you want to go ahead and upgrade to that selection. And then it also did a lot of things with the Microsoft Enterprise Mobility Suite, which is also called EMS. And this contains a lot of different licenses typed into one bundle. You have your Intune, your Azure information protection, your Azure AD, as well as some other security features in there for doing a lot more robust security enhancements on the back end to make sure you're doing a conditional access. So you're allowing people in and out of your organization appropriately for what they're trying to access in the Office 365 suite. So they did a good job of combining all these additional features sets that are outside of the Office 365 products and put them into the M365 products. And it provided a little bit kind of confusion of go, what do I need as a business? Where do I go with all this information? So on this screen here, you can see kind of laid out what it looks like now. So you have the Office 365 products on the left-hand side, which is they have enterprise plans. So you have the apps for enterprise, which basically allows you to install applications on your computer. So you can do your Word, your Excel, your PowerPoint. But it has also extra enhancements in there, which is basically beneficial for if you want to run Office in a remote desktop type of environment, or maybe you want to have some group policy behind it to kind of dictate how do I want to make sure my end users use Outlook. I want to make sure they have an OST file for doing offline saves of their information. Maybe I want people to have a saved template, so we all utilizing the same templates, and those things can be defined by group policy, which then can utilize the apps for enterprise. Then you have your E1s, E3s, and E5s. And the E1s contain your SharePoints, your Teams, the ability to use Office applications on the web. So you can go to office.com and utilize Word in the web, Excel on the web. It doesn't give you the full reach features that you have by installing the desktop applications, which is included in the apps for enterprise. But if you want to start using those things, then you start moving up to like the E3s and the E5s of the world. Now, on the right side of the chart here, I have the M365 offerings, and they do have a nice set of suite of bundles for companies that have less than 300 users. Now, people have found out a way to utilize these lower cost licensing types and had a bunch of really good information behind it for having a lot of options within the bundles, but having a lower cost to it than the enterprise SKUs. And people found a way they can actually buy from different distributors, and they can get more than 300 because they've bought from 2 different distributors. They can get to 600 or something like that. But with now all the new NCE rules, you can't actually get around that. So you're really kind of stuck with, hey, do I have more than 300 users? Then I need to go to more of the enterprise plans. Then you start looking at the E3s and the E5s. So I kind of threw a whole bunch of kind of terminologies, E3s, E5s. But for me, what do I want to use the organization? It comes down to, I think, a couple just quick asks of like, what do I want to do with the Office product? What makes sense to me as a whole business? Maybe I want to have everyone in my company run off of one license type, or maybe there's different business options of moving it to different business groups of saying, hey, maybe this business group only needs certain functionality within the business, within the Office suite. So I have to pay the $36 for the M365. Maybe they can get away with maybe the E1s, or which is only $10. So I have formulated a kind of a walkthrough step, a decision tree of trying to ask the correct questions of what makes sense to me as an organization for the licensing types I want to use, but not spending a ton of money because we potentially have a recession coming up. I want to make sure I have my cost of goods sold at the lowest amount of spend for the licenses I want to use. So make sure I make a great decision, especially now that Microsoft has teeth into the commitment levels that they have actually done with the NCE pricing. So now you're locked by an annual SKU to get the lower rate. You're stuck with that SKU for an entire year. So you want to make sure you're making the best decision for you as an organization to make sure you're using the most value out of that SKU without overspending for something you might not need, or maybe I don't have time to implement between now and then. So I'm going to talk you through what I have here is a decision tree, and this kind of formulates a process plan of directing you to where I think your license type might be. So here, we got the start. So Microsoft 365 decision tree. For me, I think the first question is, do I just need to use Microsoft 365 applications? Do I just need to have Office on my computers? I don't need to utilize email in the cloud. I don't need to have SharePoint. I don't have Teams. I'm not quite there yet. I just want to make sure my team has the ability to use Word, Excel on the computers. Great. Okay, if the answer to that is yes, then we can step down to the next question here is, hey, do I need to use this in a remote desktop environment, kind of mentioned before, to be able to use shared activation licensing? Or do I need to have control of, hey, how do I want to make sure my teams work off the same template sections or something along those lines? I can define that in group policies. If you want to have that extra control and ability to use it in a remote session, then you need to step up to the Microsoft 365 apps for enterprise, which is a $12.50 SKU. This used to be called the Microsoft 365 Pro Plus. But if you don't need to have those extra features, you can jump over to the Microsoft 365 apps for business, which is used to call Microsoft 365 Business, at an $8.25. So if that's all you need, great. And you stop right there in the decision tree. But most people do need more. And the next question is, if you need more, do you just need to have email? Okay, if you need to have email solution, then the question is, all right, do you need to have a mailbox that's larger than 50 gigabytes? So now with Microsoft Office Suites, you have the ability to have a really large email size than you had before. So the typical Office package, the Exchange Plan 1, comes with a 50 gigabyte mailbox or less. But some people have grown past that. They need to have 100 gigabytes or ability to do the archiving to be able to actually extend past 100 gigabytes. If that's the case, you need to go to the Exchange Online Plan 2, which comes at $8. But now if I need more than just the Office on my computers, and I need more than just the email, we step down to more of the bundle section here. So that gets down into, all right, the question I ask now is, how big are you? Do you have less than 300 users? If you do, we can step into more of the Microsoft 365 small business bundles. And then it kind of gets into the next question is, okay, great. So you're under 300 users. Now, do you need to install Office on your computer? And if you do you need to have this on a remote desktop session? Because that kind of defines the next licensing type you have. So if you need to have RDS, or there's legal, you need to maintain legal compliances such as like archiving, e-discovery, or mail hold, that's going to instantly jump you up to need to go to the Microsoft 365 Business Premium plans, which I have here at the top. And that's a $22 licensing SKU. And this used to be called the Microsoft 365 Business. But say if you don't need to have a remote desktop, or hey, I don't have that legal needs to have archiving and e-discovery, then the next question that would be asked is, do you need to have advanced threat protection, which is called Microsoft Defender, Office 365 Defender P1, which allows for, which does anti-spam solutions, really great with anti-phishing, so a little more capacity there, as well as does malware protection and checking for any Teams messages you get, or if someone sends you a document for Word, it will check this, make sure there's nothing embedded into that document. Or do you need to have Intune or Azure ADP1? So the Intune does your MDM solutions and kind of protecting your computer. And Azure ADP1 is the authentication, which can do multi-factor authentication, as well as the key thing I talked about a couple sessions ago was doing the conditional accessing, not allowing people from certain places around the world access your 365 offering suite, or maybe, hey, it's doing some check to make sure your computers meet certain qualifications, such as having a up-to-date antivirus protection on it. That all can come from Azure ADP1. So if you need any of those, you're going to be jumping right back up to that Microsoft 365 Business Premium Suite at $22. And for me, this is one of my favorite products because it contains so much. But if you don't have that capacity, you don't need a remote desktop solution. You already have an anti-spam, you're set, you're not doing anything with endpoint management. Then you jump down to the last question is, do I just need to have Office installed at all? So if I don't need to have Office on my computer, because maybe I bought my computers from Dell and already included it, or already spent a bunch of money on the 2016 version of Microsoft Office, I don't want to quite go there yet, then you can get away with going to the Microsoft 365 Business Basics, which is a $6 SKU. So not too bad if you pay for it annually. And real quick, all the prices I give you here are all annual commit prices. So you're locked into it for a year. Any of these prices I give you, if you want to go to a more month-to-month pricing, it does have a 20% increase on that SKU, but it does give you the flexibility of going, hey, I can use it for a month and then shut that SKU down. You're not locked into it for the full term. But if you do need to have the Office installed on your computer, then you can slide over to go to the Microsoft 365 Microsoft 365 Business Standard SKU, which is the $12.50. And also, if you want, you have the capacity to do add-ons in here. So in this little decision tree, it is cheaper to do Microsoft 365 Business Standard with $12.50. And if necessary, add in your ATP, your Defender for Office Protection, or your Azure Information Protection, which kind of gives you the ability to do encryption emails, or maybe I want to have labels on all my files to determine if they should be confidential or not. Going that direction is cheaper, spending the $2 per license than jumping up to the Microsoft 365 Business Premium SKU at $22. So really trying to dictate what you actually need as a business, but limiting you to the lowest price denominator for you as an organization to pay for annually. Let's say now I've gone through this little piece here. Hey, Ted, I'm bigger than 300. None of these will actually apply to me. So we'll step down into the next realm. So now it gets into a little bit more of a more complicated matrix here. So you're over 300 users, and we're going to basically ask the same questions because they kind of dictate you to this different types of products at a enterprise level. So really, okay, you're bigger than 300. Great. The next question is, do you need to include Windows OS licensing with your Microsoft 365 SKUs? So say, hey, I'm at Windows 10 now. I want to upgrade everyone to Windows 11. I didn't have the free version come across. So if that's the case, instead of going out and buying a whole bunch of Windows 11 licensing, you can go ahead and purchase packages that include Windows 11 for every user that you have licensed within your Microsoft tenancy. This can really kind of help drive down the cost to you as an organization, not do a big one-time cost as well. So some people definitely take advantage of that, and it is a nice SKU option out there. But if you don't need to have Windows licensing, then you can slide into more of the Office 365 products. Now, I'm going to jump in. We'll just go ahead and say you don't need Windows licensing. We're going to jump in. Hey, does your client need to have a local office or the ability to have legal compliances such as archiving, e-discovery, mailbox hold? Similar question I asked above. If you do need to have local office and you do, or you need to have that legal compliance, you're going to step into more of like the E3 realm. But if you don't need that, all you need is just the Microsoft 365 E1 plans, which comes down to be a $10 a month plan. Again, with this, you do have the capacity to do the add-on SKUs to kind of beef up the security, but doesn't necessitate the need to bump up to the higher bundle SKU. So you can add in the ATPs or the Azure Information Protection Plan right in there, or maybe just an Intune or EMS plans as well. Just those bundles alone at $6 or $9 doesn't get you up to the $23 for the E3 SKU. So let's just say you do need Office. We're going to jump into the next question is, okay, let's determine if you need to have E3 or E5. And that question for me is, does the client need to have a 365 PBX, a back-end phone system with this? And do you need to have a Power BI? And Power BI is a great utility for analyzing big sets of data. And it does have a $10 license SKU to it if you buy it additionally. So if you do have those needs, then it comes down to, hey, do you need to use Azure ADP2 and Intune? Because that might say, hey, I need to go to more of a higher level enterprise mobility suite. The Azure ADP2 does a lot more with risk-based conditional access. So it can really take an analysis of what's going on in a user base and saying, hey, this is a risky login, and go ahead and block it. And that's available in Azure ADP2. So if you need that capacity, you can go to the Office 365 E5 license, which is a $38 SKU, and then add in the EMS E5. Now, the EMS E5 is a great SKU, which does include the Azure ADP2 and Intune, but it's cheaper to go that with go the direction of buying it off of with Office 365 E5 and additionally the EMS E5 instead of going directly to the Microsoft 365 E5, which contains it all. So this will be a lesser price going that direction. Again, trying to make sure you get the most value out of your money you're spending with Microsoft. But say if you don't need any of that, you can come down to does the client need Azure ADP one, just needs to do conditional access, and does it need Intune? Then again, you go to the Office 365 E5 and you do add in there the EMS E3. And if you don't need any of that, you just go to the Office 365 E5 SKU at $38. But hey, if that might be my need as a business, I don't need to have it back in PBX. I got a phone system working great. I don't need Power BI. I'm not analyzing that big sets of data. And then it gets into more of, hey, does the client need any of the two? Do you need to have just a PBX, or maybe do you need to have Power BI and advanced threat protection? If that's the case, then you kind of come right back down again to the E5 realm. But if you don't need any of those two, then you're taking a look, does the client need to have the conditional access for risk-based authentication? If that's a yes, you just need Office 365 E3 SKUs at $23. Again, a lot less than the $38. And then you add in the EMS E5, which is about a $12 SKU. So still cheaper than buying it off the E3, the E5 licensing over here. Now, if you don't need any of that information, just dropping right down into these same questions. Does the client need to have Azure ADP1 and Intune? If so, again, you're going over to the Office 365 E3 plans and doing an add-on of EMS E3. If not, you don't need anything like that. You're just going straight to the Office 365 E3 plan for $23. And again, if necessary, adding in any additional licensing because you can purchase them ad hoc. And sometimes that is cheaper than buying that full bundle. And that comes down to if you're just buying one of the advanced threat protection, a separate PBX or Power BI. Again, it's kind of a little bit of a matrix here to kind of see what pricing makes sense. But this is a decision tree that kind of really help drive you to the correct solutions as an organization. Let's say you do need Office license. You want to take advantage of what's contained in that M365 business suite. Then you step down into kind of a smaller realm of possibilities here. And for me, the first question is, after I've determined that I do need Windows licensing, is, hey, do you need to have a 365 PBX and a Power BI? If so, you need all that. You're going to go directly down to the Microsoft 365 E5 SKU, which is a $57 SKU. Contains pretty much everything possible that's in the Microsoft 365 Business Suite. It's a great SKU, but again, it has a lot of cost to it if you go ahead and add that per user across your organization. So maybe you don't need everything that's in there. So drop down to the next question is, do you need Power BI or PBX with two of the following? You have your anti-threat protection, the Defender for Office 365, or the Azure Information Protection Plan 2 and Azure Azure ADP2? The answer is yes. Unfortunately, you're right back to the Microsoft 365 E5 SKU at $57. But if you don't need all that, then it kind of really gets into a question of, does the client need Azure AD P2 and Azure Information Protection Plan P2? Again, this is the risk-based conditional access and doing some advanced labeling on the back end of SharePoint or Teams. The answer is yes. Then you start looking at Microsoft 365 E3 with adding in the additional bundle of the EMS E5, which is cheaper than going to the full price of the E5 over here. Lastly, if you don't need any of those, you're jumping over to the Microsoft 365 E3 SKU at $36. And if necessary, adding in those additional bundles that you might want to take advantage of. So that really gives you capability is really defining which product will fit you as an organization, as well as making sure you're spending the least amount of money per license. And you can apply this to just a individual or a business unit or the business as a whole, kind of going down what functions each individual user might be using within a business group or just a one user alone. And they can kind of define, make sure you're spending the least amount of money as possible. So to develop this process here, we have just really a skewing capability here that kind of goes through and takes a look at all the different license types out there and puts it all together and, hey, what's available for each one? Now, like I said at the beginning of this, I'm not going to go through each individual phase of this, but it really kind of defines out here, if you want to talk about what capacity I want to use this organization, say, hey, I want to make sure to have, my OneDrive for business. And if so, what size plan can I use with it? I want to have 1 terabyte. I want you to have bigger than 1 terabyte plans. And if that's the case, I need to take a look at my Microsoft Office suites over here, your Office E3s, your E5s, which can give you larger than the 1 terabyte plan. So again, the big thing here is your Exchange Online plans. So a lot of people use 50 gigabyte mailboxes, but then you start growing past that. What's my next plan of activity? Maybe I need to go to the next bundle and take a look at, hey, here's the E1 plan, needs to jump up to the E3 plan, which contains that 100 gigabyte license. But maybe it just make sense just to buy it ad hoc instead of going from E1 straight to E3, which is a $10 SKU to a $23 SKU. You can take the E1 SKU and just add on the Exchange Online plan too, which is an $8 SKU. So you can do a $18 SKU with those two combined, which is cheaper than moving to the full E3 SKU because you might not need everything in the E3 licensing suite. So it's really trying to define what you're trying to get out of the solution and make sure that you're not utilizing stuff that you don't need and paying for that capability. Now, this gets into a whole bunch of different other activities in here, just besides that sizing. It gets into, hey, do we have Microsoft Intune plans? You can see here the 365 Business Premium does include Intune, where the other SKUs do not until you get to the M365 suites, your E3 and E5. They do have some capacity of doing some licensing equivalent for CALs locally, moving to the cloud, so you can take advantage of that. And then you get down here at the bottom is kind of more the legal discovery I was talking about, the core e-discovery and the advanced e-discovery for content hold. You can see that's included in Microsoft 365 Business Premium Suite, as well as E3 and E5, but not in your E1s or the Business Standard and Business Basics. So that's not included there. And lastly, I got 2 more slides with this. I just kind of go into the information protection plan. Really just want to highlight in this one, you have email archiving. So the ability to do email archiving, to have that extension email box outside of what's included in your what you see within your Outlook folders. You can have an offline sync right there, which is contained in the Microsoft 365 Business Plan, as well as the E1, E3, E5, and the Microsoft E3 and E5 as well. And then lastly, we have more of the endpoint protection and what's included in there, your Windows Autopilot, your Windows Hello, taking a look at like the advanced threat protections, that risk-based authentication I was talking about. You can see here for like doing the Windows Autopilot and the Azure AD P1 is what's included in the Microsoft 365 Business Plan. You can see here it's got the dot here for the Windows Autopilot, as well as Azure Active Directory Premium included there. To utilize any of these other SKUs as a bundle, you have to go to the M365 suite, which is more expensive SKU, but includes a lot more. And again, the E5 does include everything, but it does have that price of $57. So that's pretty much all I have for you. I just want to make sure that you guys know that we have a decision tree out there to really kind of help define and guide you as an organization to make sure you're picking the appropriate license SKU that makes sense, one, for your users, and 2 for your pocketbook to make sure you're not spending anything more than you need, especially for a potential upcoming year where costs might be looked at closely. So if you guys have any questions regarding this or any other licensing type questions, please let me know. I'll go ahead and take some questions here and leave the Q&A section open for a couple minutes, and we'll see if we have anything. No questions yet. Well, I don't see any other questions coming through at this time. So if you guys want, please feel free to reach out to your account management or anybody here at Ntiva. Happy to walk you through your Microsoft 365 journey of trying to select the correct license to make sure it makes sense for you as an organization. We do have this document available. If you guys want to take a look at it, please let us know. And again, thank you for always attending these Microsoft webinars. I really appreciate it. Hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving and happy holidays. If I don't hear from you in December, and I'll talk to you all soon. Thank you so much and enjoy your day. Have a good one.